Today we are going to talk about fight, flight, or freeze. Now, most likely you either know a military veteran, a war veteran, or you've seen one in movies who has had PTSD and has a fight, flight, or freeze response in reaction to something that's going on around them. Now, in the movie, we know that that response is being triggered by something in the present that is similar to something that happened to them in the past. For instance, they may hear a car backfire and that fight, flight, or freeze is going to kick in. But this is because the brain is interpreting that backfire as an explosion that occurred in the past. So they're having that same reaction occur. But fight, flight, or freeze doesn't just happen to people who have PTSD. It's not necessarily a response to something that severe. Because fight, flight, or freeze is something that we all experience from one time or another, and in one degree or another. It's a response that is built into us in order to protect us. Yet the problem comes in when it's showing up in your everyday life. And a lot of times it's showing up and you don't even recognize it. Or you don't know how, if you do recognize it, then you don't know how to stop it. So we are going to look at today what's going on with that fight, flight, or freeze response. What causes it? And also what it might look like in your everyday life. And lastly, I will give you a glimpse of what needs to be done in order to overcome this fight, flight, or response and causing damage to your life and controlling your life. In other words, I will talk to you about how to actually take control yourself. Hi, I am Tawnya Kordenbrock, and let me welcome you. If you've been here before, or if you haven't, let me know you're here. Let me know a little bit about you. I am a licensed professional clinical counselor and online emotions coach, where I train women how to rewire their brains so that they can break free from fear, anger, and shame to be able to love themselves, to feel loved by others, and to have a deeper relationship with God. Now, I hope right now that you will go ahead and click that subscribe button so that you can receive more of these teachings. And also want to let you know at this point that I do have an exciting resource for you that I think you'll want to go ahead and take advantage of. And I'll tell you more about that at the end of this video. As we get started, let's look at what is fight, flight, freeze. Well, this is a response that occurs within us as out of fear. It is triggered by fear, and it triggers a neurological reaction within us, within the brain. Now, that neurological reaction within the brain is also going to influence our thinking and our body's response. To explain this further, let me give you an example of, say you are out at shopping at a store, you're in a clothing store, and someone walks in with a gun. Now that fight, flight, freeze response is going to kick in immediately. It is an automatic response. And depending on your background, depending on your experiences, depending on your training, that is all going to play into how you are going to react. So what can happen when you see that gun at the store and you see a person holding it? That fear is going to grab a hold of you. That's in the emotional part of your brain. It's going to trigger that automatic thought of, I am in danger. I am absolutely in danger right now, and I could get killed. So in order to protect you then, okay, this is not a time to stand around and to think about, is this a real gun or is it not? Is this a joke or isn't it? No, you're not going to be functioning from the logical part of your brain. This is going to be an emotional response that's going to automatically tell you you are in danger. Well, then what's going to happen? Those nerves or from your brain are going to, they come down your spine and they come into your body. And your body is going to then have a response. Your heart rate is going to increase. Your breathing is either going to increase and become shallow from the upper part of your chest, or you could even hold your breath. And that's going to be a part of that freeze response where you would hold your breath. Blood is, as your heart starts pumping rapidly, blood is going to go into the extremities of your body, into your arms, into your hands, and into your legs, so that you can have this, you can defend yourself in some way. You can get yourself to safety. So how are you going to respond? You could fight. You could attack this person physically. You could hit them. You could knock the gun away. You could flee. That means you could run away. You could go and hide behind a clothing rack. You could run out of the store, or you might freeze. And if you freeze, you're just going to stand there. And the purpose of freezing is not to be seen, so that you do not appear to be a threat. You do not draw attention to yourself. Some other ways that you could freeze besides just literally standing still might be to play dead. And you could do this by, and again, this is an automatic response. I mean, that you would faint and you could just collapse on the floor. You can't make yourself faint, right? This is an automatic response that is kicking in. And as I said, different people will respond in different ways. Some people, for instance, if you were in the military or if you've had extensive training in martial arts, then you may be able to respond in a fight with a fight response. That when that blood goes into your extremities, your heart is beating quickly, your digestion shuts down because it's not a time to be thinking about food and getting nutrients to your body. It's a time for survival. So if you've been trained in that, then you may fight. And then other people will just naturally fight. But then also if you've had experiences where you have had to hide in the past, for instance, if when you were a child and there was abuse going on, say your dad was beating your mom and you were told, go hide. Then you would run away, you would go hide under the bed, in the closet, you would run to a neighbor's house. So this would be a way in which you were already conditioned to respond by running away. Now, another situation might be, normally when someone has a freeze response, freezing kind of shows a pattern of helplessness, of learned helplessness. And for example, if as a child you were repeatedly beaten, and the only way you could defend yourself was to curl up in a ball so that you wouldn't you wouldn't inadvertently antagonize the person who was hitting you. Or if you were raped or, by someone who was much more powerful, stronger than you, was much larger than you, or if you were just, physically attacked by someone who was much more powerful than you and you couldn't get away, or if you were sexually abused repeatedly, and so you had no way of escaping the abuse, then this instilled within you a sense of helplessness, that there is nothing you can do. So now as an adult, when this kicks in, this will be the way that you will lean toward, as so that you will have a freeze response. Let me know if that makes sense for you. Does that explain for you how it kicks in and then how you might respond? And I think this is important to know because a lot of times we can feel guilty for the way that we responded, and we can wish, like for instance, I have heard women who were raped or who were in compromising sexual situations where they felt like they should say something to be able to get out of it. They felt like, oh, I should have fought, I should have screamed, but instead they froze. It was a natural response, an automatic response over which you did not have control. So there's no reason why you should feel ashamed or feel guilty in the way that you responded. There are many times when fight, flight, or freeze kicks in, though, that we don't want it to. Instead, we want to be able to function in a way that's going to help us genuinely get to safety, or to repair a situation, to be able to overcome an obstacle. Yet if we are fighting or running away or shutting down, then that won't be able to happen. So why does this happen? Let me give you an example of a snake. Some people are very frightened of snakes, and so if you are out on a trail walking and you see a snake, then that fight, flight, or freeze is going to kick in. You might fight it by trying to hit it with a stick. You might flee by running away off onto another trail so you don't have to be around the snake, or you might just freeze. And so this is going to be an automatic response that's going to kick in. So if you have had that happen to you before, now another day you're walking along, say even the same trail, could even be a different trail, and you see a long stick lying on the sidewalk, and you just get a glance of it, that fight, flight, or freeze is going to kick in. Okay, it's not a snake. You're not in the danger that the emotional part of your brain is telling you that you are in, but it is your body is going to respond in the same way. That response is going to automatically kick in. So even though it's just a stick on the pathway, you still are going to have, you might run away, you might freeze, or you might think, oh, I need to hit it and get it out of the way. Now it may only last an instant, and before you realize, that was just a snake. I mean, a stick. That wasn't a snake. It was just a stick. No big deal. And you just walk on and, walk over top of it. That's what you want to be able to do. You want to be able to, in the moment, calm yourself, which you can when you see, oh, this is a stick. You calm yourself. And then you move forward to be able to walk over the stick or to pick it up and move it out of the way and to go on enjoying your life. Now let's take that explanation and look at it in light of everyday experiences of when you encounter challenges or difficulties, or when you have upsets in relationships. So let's say you have a history of being mocked as a child. You had siblings who made fun of you all the time. When you went to school, you were bullied all the time. And so you dealt with that. Okay, that would have kicked in that fight, flight, or freeze response. So that as a child, you acted out and you were always, possibly you became a bully yourself. You started roughing up other people, or just even maybe with your words, were very critical with your words. Perhaps you ran away, you had that flee response, or maybe you just froze up because you felt like there's no way I can't get away from this. And so you would just freeze up, possibly be a people pleaser and say what you felt like that everybody wanted you to say, to act the way they wanted you to act. Okay, so now let's bring that into the present. And someone says something teasing you. Okay, they're just having fun. They're your friend. They want to make you laugh, or, just get on you just a little bit. But because of your history, that's going to impact the emotional part of your brain. It's going to touch on that hurt place within you. And the emotional part of your brain wants to protect you from that. So it's going to kick in that automatic response that it has learned over the years. And then you are going to respond in the same way that you learned a long time ago. So how are you going to respond when your friend teases you? Well, you might become defensive. You might attack them by saying, well, yeah, look at you and how you are. Or you might just get up and walk away and not talk to them. That would be fleeing. Or you might freeze and you might just kind of sink into yourself, melt into yourself. And so you don't say anything, you don't do anything, and you just hold that hurt within you. The same thing can happen, in a marriage or a dating relationship, where your husband can say something to you and it hurts your feelings and it kicks in that shame response, or even a fear response of being rejected. And so that automatic way of responding is going to kick in just like it has in the past when you were hurt, even though he may be just saying something, what he's thinking, and not intending to hurt you. It feels like it. The emotional part of your brain is telling you, how can he say this? Surely he knows how much that hurts me. But he may not know. And so but the response, the fight, flight, or flee, no, the fight, flee, or freeze response is going to cause you to then either become defensive and attack him, or to shut down, to pull away from him. But the whole time believing he meant to hurt you. He understands how deeply that went into you. Or you might freeze and then just take that upon yourself, that shame. So when you notice in relationships that you are becoming angry, becoming defensive all the time, even over small things, then you can look at this as a type of fight, flight, freeze kicking in. You're having a fight response where you're becoming defensive. If you see that what you do, and when there's an upset in a relationship, that you escape and then you become overly involved in work or cleaning or in taking care of other people, or becoming overly involved in other people's lives, Or you notice that you are continually shutting down and hiding away, you're overeating, you're feeding those emotions, then you can also look at possibly fight, flight, freeze is kicking in for you. Now, if that is happening in your life, what can you do about it? How can you overcome fight, flight, or freeze? Well, you have to train yourself. You have to train yourself to respond differently. And as you train yourself, what you're doing is you're creating new neural pathways, new response patterns. And what this will do for you is it will allow you to not run away or become defensive or shut down, but instead it will allow you to see more clearly what is going on and what you need to do. But so how do you do this? How do you retrain yourself? How do you create these new neural pathways? The starting point is to recognize what is happening. And because it's an automatic response, you won't be able to stop it when it is happening. You won't be able to shift it when it's happening. But if instead you have practiced noticing it later, so for instance, if you paid attention to how you shut down earlier in the day when you were talking to your husband, then you can look at that. You can look at what were the emotions that were getting stirred within me. As that emotional part of my brain was getting stirred, what did it do? What thoughts did it generate about danger? Or danger to the relationship, danger about how he was viewing me. And then what went on within my body? What went on with my breathing? What went on with my bodily responses and with my posture? And as you become more familiar with that, the situations in which it kicks in and then what happens, you will become more likely able to notice it when it is happening. Now, when you get to that point, when it's kicking in, you're following through in that familiar pattern, but at the same time you're thinking, what am I doing? Look what I'm doing. The pattern is kicking in. Then you can begin doing some opposites. Where I recommend that you start doing opposites is to an opposite from what the pattern usually does, is to start with your body. Now, a lot of times what women tend to do is they say, well, I need to feel differently. I need to not feel the way I'm feeling. I need to think differently. I need to tell myself different things. That usually isn't the best place to start. Especially if you've had any type of abuse in your background, your body is going to, your body remembers that. And so, this neural pathway, this neural pattern is very much connected to your body. So you have to engage your body in order to change that neural response and to create new pathways. A simple way that you can do this is to just simply change your breathing. So if you are holding your breath, then take some deep breaths deep down in your belly, not up here in your chest. Or if you're breathing very shallowly and breathing through your mouth, do the same thing. Change your posture. If you're tight, if you're in that fight, having a fight response, you're going to be stiff, you're going to be hard. Loosen your body up. If you are if you're freezing, you're shutting down, then try to get some movement going. If you're slumped, then pull your shoulders back, straighten your back, get some strength in your back. And then look at what that changes for you. How does it change how you feel? Are you as fearful now? Do you feel as much shame right now? Are you thinking more clearly now? Can you see, possibly this other person didn't really mean to hurt you or shame you in the way that you originally thought. Now again, and let me emphasize this takes a lot of work. This is something that I teach and work with my students in my Mastering Emotions program on repeatedly. We're always working on this, working on this, working on this as it comes up in everyday situations within their lives. So it takes a lot of work to change this response pattern, but it is well worth it, because what it will help you to do is, instead of pulling away from the people that really do love you and people that you love, instead of pulling away when you feel hurt, when you feel fearful, when you feel embarrassed or ashamed, instead you can learn to go near them and to be able to reveal to them those more vulnerable parts of your heart, the parts that they care about. Instead of attacking them, instead of becoming defensive, instead of pulling away from them, instead of ignoring what's going on, instead of shutting down and just taking shame upon yourself. But instead, you will be able to move forward with your relationship, with your life situations, and to enrich them and to enrich your life. You won't be controlled by this, but in this response pattern, but you will instead have control. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I do have a surprise for you. And before I tell you about that, let me know if you found value in this teaching, and if you have any questions about it. Let me know what it is that fight, flight, freeze response has been like in you. And so the surprise that I have is a complete course, a whole course on helping you understand that anxiety that you feel, the fear that you feel, all of those emotions, and being able to calm them and be able to have some self-care, and also to be able to use your connection with God, prayer and scripture, to develop a deeper relationship with Him and to feel more connected with Him. The goal of the course is called Claim Your Calm, and it is to help you to be able to bring peace to your mind, your body, and your spirit. So check that out, and I hope you'll get started in it today. I'll leave a link for it below. Have a great day.